Hi everyone, it's Dan Farming here from Riverview Portfolio. Really pleased to have been joined today by Chelsea from Fluidly, along with my colleague Robbie, who'll be running the webinar, giving you an introduction into what Fluidly is all about and how that can help you with your cash flow management in your business. So without further ado, we're going to jump into exactly where we got to on the webinar.
Here we've got the Fluidly platform that very much sits in the middle. And then we actually have 4 different elements that we like to think makes up the Fluidly platform, but also in time very much giving you that intelligent cash flow tool. So we do have the ability for you to utilize the forecast, and that very much allows you to plan for the future. And planning for the future, it can be a whole multitude of things. Sometimes it's kind of those growth strategic conversations you might be having with your client managers, which is very much maybe where do you see yourself in 12 months? But equally what it also can be is just making sure that you're continuously ticking along. You've got money coming back into the business, maybe from consistently chasing those late payers or just kind of from revenue places that you're getting money in from. But that's where our intelligent chase function comes into play, which is something that really focuses on drilling down into showing you those late payers and how you can very much try and bring that money back into the business. But also what we do have as part of our platform, which I won't necessarily be going into a lot of detail today, but it's something to kind of advise you. We do have a funding element of our platform. So if you are interested in ever looking for any form of funding, please kind of speak to Dan directly, and then he can kind of get in touch with us if it's something you would like to discuss with us further. But all in all, those 4 different elements very much make up the Fluidly platform, which in line allows you to kind of really focus on where you are going, and you can utilize the cash flow forecast specifically to very much kind of visualize from a visual perspective, visualize what's going to happen, but also it allows you to have those strategic conversations with the likes of your client managers that you guys all kind of speak to specifically with Robbie and Dan. So bearing that in mind, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pop into the platform. So just give me a minute whilst I kind of pop in there. But I mean, Dan, from your side, are you kind of used to having are you kind of having consistent cash flow conversations with your clients?
Yeah, and I think the main thing with cash flow, I think we find the reason why we focused on Fluidly as the sort of solution in terms of what's there is the fact of cash flow. We tend to find that people focus on it where maybe things aren't going well. Or maybe when they're looking for funding, whereas I think cash flow and managing that and using it as a tool to help people grow their business needs to be something that is consistently done alongside things like management accounts and other bits and pieces and conversations that we might have. And it's finding easy ways for people to do that without it being quite as burdensome as what has been in the past for people when they're extracting stuff onto Excel and other sort of features like that.
Yes, definitely. And you hit the nail on the head there. The wonderful elephant in the room, Excel. Do not get me wrong. I absolutely adore an Excel spreadsheet. But one thing I will say before I even kind of go into the products that I love about Fluidly is the fact that it's consistently looking at your information in real time. So any information you're popping into your general ledger or the team are popping into the general ledger for you in terms of kind of preparing those management accounts or kind of looking at that on a monthly basis, we are consistently updating off the back of that information. So rather than you having to kind of think, oh, okay, well, we need to go back right to the beginning, because it's being updated in real time, you have the ability to see a snapshot of exactly where you're sitting. And that's exactly what this screen focuses on that we have here. We effectively like to break it down into 8 widgets, but just kind of showing you a brief overview. You have your opening reconciled cash, your cash coming in and your cash coming out. And like I said, this is direct information that we are pulling through from the general ledger. So we will very much show you the actuals that are sitting in orange, and then your forecasting that's sitting in purple. As you know more than anyone, for everybody on this webinar, your cash coming in, your cash going out, they're always going to sync together, because as you grow, your costs are going to grow. But where it's really nice is it's giving you an inclination of where you were previously sitting, the current month you're sitting in, and then forecasting forward 2 months for you. But also why I love it is because it actually shows you a month-on-month comparison to where you were sitting last month. And this is really good for you to be able to drill down into kind of where you want to be and what you want to focus on, but also can highlight massive trends for you that we might have seen. So then those trends can either be, like I said, positive or negative. So trends you want to continue, or equally trends you want to diminish on. And so for example, here, we've noticed cash coming in has decreased by £710. obviously appreciate could be more. So it's kind of a blessing that it's not necessarily as much, but equally you want to diminish on that. So you want to actually stop that trend. So you need to understand more why, and that's when you can be having those strategic conversations with your kind of client manager, or you can have a strategic conversation around that cash flow projection and what you're going to do to kind of combat that. But then we also have an overdue part, or our intelligent cash flow, our intelligent chase function part, which really focuses on drilling down to show you your overdue customers. And honestly, where the kind of attendees of this webinar will be able to use that is allowing you to see the norm versus the reality. And it very much breaks down your overdue customers into a really methodical way. So it's like a digital checklist effectively that you can then very much kind of focus on what you need to focus on to get that money coming back in. Because whilst your kind of client managers or kind of your accountants are very much there to make sure everything is ticking along, you naturally want this money to come back into the business. And sometimes that's harder than others. So what the great thing about the intelligent cash flow side of Fluidly is it really allows you to very much focus on that without directly being involved, but also at the same time, it allows you to just very much kind of methodically work your way through it. So those are your overdue kind of customer side of things. And the other thing I want to just point out off the back of this page that I particularly love is the fact that it's not only showing you the numerical side of things, but it's equally showing you the visual side. And if you're anything like myself, I am a massive visual person. So the fact that we have this here, it really allows you kind of to decide, or allows you to maybe see things you weren't necessarily noticing on maybe previous kind of Excel spreadsheets, or things you weren't aware of, just simply because you have those peaks and those troughs and those nice kind of aesthetically pleasing graphs to look at as well. But the kind of last widget I want to kind of focus on this page, just to show you and give you a brief overview of kind of the overview dashboard and the client side of it, is our, the likes of yourself, it's very much this expected VAT payment that you do have. And if you use the accruals or cash scheme from a VAT perspective, we can give you VAT and auto VAT estimates off of the back of the information that's coming through from the general ledger. And the reason why I point this out is because I actually think it's just really nice for you guys to consistently see what might happen and what that potential payment is going to look like. But equally, then what you can do off the back of that is have the conversation with your client manager to make sure that you are forward planning for that and you can utilize it from that perspective, rather than being in a little bit of a flurry. And because I think we've all very much been there, where we have this VAT payment that's suddenly due and we have to kind of obviously accumulate everything to be able to pay that. So it's nice to have an inclination of what might happen or what's going to happen, so you can forward plan and think about those next steps. And I think that's what cash flow is all about. It's all about those next steps and all about making sure that you are thinking about the future, but you're also being realistic in that thought process as well. So that is very much the kind of Fluidly overview dashboard. But if I popped into the specific forecast that we do have, naturally you're going to want to know what's making up these numbers. Anybody would. So if I was to pop in here, we do actually have this forecasting page. And I'll be honest in saying we've actually done a little bit of a revamp that came live this morning. So it's nice that I can show it to you here. But where you're going to be using this is to drill down into your forecast. And naturally, you're going to be doing this with your client manager anyway, but it's something that you can go in or you can log in, drill into, and really get into the nitty and gritty. And what Fluidly effectively does is it provides you with that cash flow forecast, but allows you to kind of see potential trends or kind of potential information that you might not necessarily have noticed, or you might want to just be a little bit more on top of. And from your side, what I would probably really be focusing on from this page would actually be the visual representation that we have. So kind of your actual sitting in orange and your forecast sitting in purple. And because Fluidly is all about utilizing kind of the AI in the background and looking at the behaviors off the back of your general ledger, we will effectively show you 12 months previous, so 12 months previous forecast or 12 months previous general ledger activity. And then we will forecast off the back of that, looking at regularities and looking at consistencies from that information. And where I really like it is not only do we show you this visual representation, but you equally can actually see an inclination of where you're going to be going from a numerical perspective as well. Also, the fact that you can toggle down on a weekly and daily to get a little more of a snapshot of exactly what's going on, and bringing that to eye level is really important from what we believe is really important from our side. But what I will tell you is that if you're looking for a generalized overview and you're going to be having this conversation on a monthly basis, you will want to be focusing on that monthly tab that you can see here. You can also use the arrows, just so you know, again, more of a little bit of a technical standpoint, but you can use the arrows to show more on the actuals, less on the forecasting, or vice versa, depending on what you would like to see and what you would like to focus on. But what Fluidly effectively does is it actually pulls in all of your different account lines. So for you guys, it would be your chart of accounts. And then we equate those chart of accounts to a numerical value. And if I was to open some of these up, we'll actually see a lot of these come in. So you can see that we've pulled through a chart of accounts here. And you can very much keep this really clear, keep this really size, set it up the way you want to set it up. So if you're utilizing the forecast, you're in a position that you know exactly when you come in, you know where you're going. And what I will say, and this goes for anybody on the call or any kind of other future ones down from my standpoint, is I'm more than happy to help with that initial setup. Off the back of today, if you are interested in utilizing Fluidly, it will be a case of you getting in touch with the likes of Dan or Robbie. And then what we can always do is jump on a call, look at your information, make sure we've got that initial setup correct. So then you can have those strategic conversations with your client managers going forward. But going back to kind of what it does is it very much kind of pulls that account line in. And then you can see the value that we're looking at here is looking at it on a monthly basis. And this is just kind of a general overview, but you're always going to want to know what's making up that overview. So if I was to click into this, through the fact that we do an integration, we actually pull through all of the different bank accounts you've got set up in Xero, and you will know exactly what they are. But we equally, through doing so, we then pull in the payments, bills, and invoices as and when they leave the account. So you'll always have that information in real time. But equally, what we kind of also provide you with is ability to see regular transactions, but also the ability to add one-off transactions. And what regular transactions are is us effectively looking at continuous behaviors off the back of the general ledger, noticing the continualities and the regularities of that information and saying, do you know what, this has been so continuous over a period of time, we are going to forecast this forward for you. And how we'll actually show you is that is the amount on the right hand side, and then we'll show you kind of the company on the left. But if you hover over this little compass, again, cheesily the compass there to drive you in the right direction, it will show you a logical explanation into why that's being pulled in. So you will always understand exactly what's making up that number. 99% of the time, we will give you an average because we think that's more consistent with the fact that throughout the month, you're not able to kind of base everything on actuals. But what I will say, if you don't necessarily agree with the number or you want to delve into that a bit more deeper, just get in touch with Robbie. And we can, or Robbie and Dana, we can very much kind of look at that. Or alternatively, we do have the ability for you to come through our support function directly. In all honesty, probably best from that side is to go through Robbie and Dan. And the reason I say that is because then they can get in touch with myself and we can very much kind of drill into seeing exactly what's going on. So you have that kind of priority support off the back of utilizing Fluidly. With Riverview, you also have the kind of ability to kind of utilize myself as well. So that is very much the regular transactions. However, we do also know sometimes you guys might have things that happen that haven't gone through the general ledger yet. So bearing that in mind, you can actually add regular transactions in. And why I love this is just, it's a really nice way for you to see what's going on in your business and where it's going to be useful and how you're going to know what's coming up, what you need to maybe forward plan for and what you need to think about. But the fact that it's all all written down, you don't necessarily need to keep it in your head because you guys have so many things going on. You shouldn't have to necessarily do that. You should have it on a bit of paper or not a bit of paper, on a screen that you can very much look at. Equally, if you do decide to add anything to the forecast, what I would say is it's best just to make your client manager aware of that. So do kind of drop your client manager or the likes of Robbie and Dan an email just to say, look, I've added something in there from that perspective. But that is very much those regular transactions, but we also have those one-off transactions. One-off transactions, I'm sure you imagine, don't go into as much detail as regular transactions, but anything you do add to this page will change the number at the top. And it goes back to kind of what I said around kind of forward projections and very much kind of planning for that future. And that's where Fluidly is really good because it allows you to see what you've got coming up, what you need to focus on and what you need to be aware of, which is great when you're thinking about those next steps. And I think particularly whilst nobody plans for a pandemic or did plan for a pandemic in any way, a lot of people have realized the importance of being on top of cash flow, but also just being aware of what's actually going on and what's very much happening. And that's not me suggesting anybody on this call isn't. It's just merely me saying my experience is a lot of people are really kind of beginning to think about that. And you know, the good old phrase of cash is king, it's something that is becoming very, very prominent in conversations these days. So that is allowing you to very much kind of drill into the information. But in terms of kind of the other elements you might use in the Fluidly forecast, we do also have a daily breakdown. This daily breakdown doesn't go into as much detail, I'm sure you can imagine, but effectively the way I like to think of this is it's just a live statement-like function. Shows you what's coming up, shows you what's being paid, but you can actually use it to search for a particular customer bill or invoice. So whilst I appreciate some people still might give you those kind of invoices via paper, rather than having that or popping that into the general ledger, what you can actually do is you can go in here and see what's going on, but you can then equate every single customer bill or invoice or anything or transaction effectively to an account line. So you can then see exactly where that's sitting, so you can go in accordingly and look at it from a forecasting perspective as well. And the last thing I want to show you off the back of the forecast side of thing is very much the past performance kind of tab that we have. And this is just us drilling down into what we thought might happen versus what actually happened. So particularly useful, sorry, I've got the hiccups, if you're having that client conversation with your client manager, or you're having that conversation with your client manager. And the reason why I always think this is good, because it actually can give you an inclination of, do you need to think about what's going to come in next month? Or do you need to think about what's the next steps? For example, here, we forecast this, whereas kind of this came in, which is great because it's nearly a 50% increase. That's fantastic. How do we make sure that trend continues? You guys are going to be comfortable, or you're going to be happy seeing that trend. So in that situation, how do we make sure that we're forward planning and we're going to continue that? And what do we need to do? Is it some prerequisite work that we need to make sure we're continuing, or actually maybe it's seasonality, maybe it's something that we need to take into consideration from that perspective. So it just really allows you to drill down and see exactly what's going on, but understand the kind of behaviors and the approach you might want to take from a kind of forecasting perspective. So that is very much the past performance. But I mean, I've not noticed kind of any kind of questions coming in as of yet, but let me just double check. Yeah, no questions coming in from that perspective as of yet, but hopefully you guys
just from Chelsea, just from a request to all the participants, if you have got questions, please do use the chat and Q&A and stuff, because obviously it's great to have Chelsea here and she knows the software inside out alongside Robbie, so please do feel free to ask. Don't worry about asking anything. Nothing's a stupid question.
Yes, no, I'm a firm believer you never have a silly question. The only silly thing is not actually asking it. Yes, I mirror exactly what Dan said. Dan, I'm not too sure if you want to add anything to that, or kind of what I've said right now, but obviously, or I can continue. It's up to yourself.
Yeah, no, you carry on. No, like I said, like Robbie, I'll jump in if there's anything to add or link into what clients are doing.
Yeah, fantastic, awesome. Well, look, the last kind of well, I say the last. There's two more sections actually. The next section is actually, it sits within Boost My Cash Flow, and we are thinking about changing that name. So please kind of ignore that. But effectively, what this one focuses on is the credit control side of things. It really drills down on you being able to kind of chase those late payers, and appreciating you might utilize some of the general ledgers that you guys use through Review. So it might actually maybe be you might use the kind of Xero functionality from that side, but a lot of people use this in conjunction with the Xero functionality. And the reason they do this is because it's just the most user-friendly platform, right? It effectively pulls all of your customers in from Xero, and then it breaks it down in a color-coded system. So red for your very late payers, amber for your late payers, and then your predictable payers sit in green. So those are the ones you don't necessarily need to worry about. But where I really love this is we actually show you the norm versus the reality, because we are analyzing in the background those behaviors. So you can see them in a bit more detail, but actually if we click into it, we'll then be able to see exactly what's going on. And we'll always give you that behavioral insight just from pulling that customer in. So it might be like they normally pay 7 days early, they normally pay 41 days late, so on and so forth. But then if you click into it, you will see exactly what's going on. And this is particularly useful if you are if you are in charge of your credit control and you're having that conversation with your customer, you then have the data behind you to drive it. So, and I appreciate kind of that, well, that kind of conversation is quite quite a difficult one to have, and it's quite one that's quite emotive. So if you have the data behind you, it kind of takes the emotion out of it and allows you to very much say, hey, look, I'm just giving you a call. I'll be honest in saying you normally pay 7 days early, but actually I've noticed that we've got an invoice overdue for 69 days ago, kind of what's going on, what's happening. But you can very much then actually have that conversation, because you will want to be kind of focusing on bringing this money back into the bank, and because effectively it's money that you are owed. But also what you can do off the back of this software as well is very much actually send a chaser email. And if you send a chaser email, it will just literally pop up here and it will give you all that information. And you can see it is quite a formal email, but it's just really highlighting all the things that your customer needs to be aware of. And it's kind of very much drilling down on how much they're due, how many days overdue they're due by, but also it gives that deep link into the invoice that sits within Xero, so they then can't say that they didn't receive said invoice. But equally, it just allows you to kind of see what's going on. And the way I would recommend using this, if you're going to use it, I would be recommending popping the name of the customer in here and just CCing your contact in from review from that side, just simply because it allows them to keep an eye on what's coming in. It allows you to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. And then actually you can kind of have a little bit, maybe more of a two-prong approach, so they can chase off the back of the email that you sent through kind of fluidly from that side. But also it just allows you to monitor what's going on, and you can add notes to the system, but you can consistently see what's popping up. And you can see, like I said before, it very much resembles that kind of digital checklist. And a lot of well, obviously we partner with Dan and Robbie, but a lot of our kind of partners, clients use this directly just because it allows them to methodically break it down and very much kind of just stay on top of what's going on. So that is the kind of chasing late payers, and very similar to what I said before. If you want to run through this specifically looking at your data, that is no problem. Just get in touch with Dan and Robbie, and then what we can do is we can arrange a call. It might be a case that they might be able to run that through that with you, but if you would like to kind of maybe kind of run through it with myself alongside obviously one of the client managers on the call, probably I would imagine it would be Robbie, that is absolutely no problem. We can very much arrange that and kind of pop that in the diary. But the last section I want to kind of run through with you before I stop speaking is the kind of plan for my future. And I'm sure we've all been there, where you've very much had that conversation saying like, oh, well, where do I see myself in 12 months? Or where do I see myself in 3 months time? And I think a lot of people are beginning to kind of think about that growth, or that strategic growth that they're really wanting to focus on. And traditionally, I'll be honest, a lot of people tend to use an Excel spreadsheet. And like I said, I love an Excel spreadsheet. However, what I will say is, if you look away from an Excel spreadsheet, it's effectively out of date. Alongside consistently keeping on top of that is quite a time-lengthy process. So actually what Fluidly have done is created a scenario planner that allows you to see an instantaneous impact on your cash flow off the back of the scenario that you're planning for. What we do is we kind of break it down into 3 widgets. But genuinely, what I will say from your side, is it doesn't matter what widget you go into, because you can chop and change between them. But if I was to kind of pop into here, and then I was going to kind of maybe start from a blank slate, what you'll actually see is we'll pull that forecast line in from the forecasting page. Personally, I switch it to monthly just because it shows more peaks of the troughs and gives you a better inclination of where you want to head to. And you might have a goal in your head of kind of this is the number. And this allows you to kind of very much look at it to see, well, from a visual perspective, to see how you're going to get there. And what you'll notice on the right-hand side is there is a whole multitude of scenarios. And I guess from your perspective, you might be consistently looking at maybe someone might adjust adjust a customer supplier. They might look at adjusting kind of the rates, or how much you use a customer, or how much you use a supplier. So you can actually very much pull that in. And if I was just to kind of populate that scenario here, I can bring that in and kind of pull in that customer supplier. And once I've populated this field with that customer supplier, it will actually bring up a scroller. That scroller can go positive, or that scroller can go negative. So if I know someone's going to be increasing their usage with myself by, let's just say 30% over the period of a year, what I can then see is actually I can equate that scenario to a numerical number. And the great thing about that is I then have that, and I can know that that's sitting there, and then I can plan accordingly. Because while someone might be adjusting their usage with myself, I need to make sure I have enough staff in place. I maybe need to make sure I have enough stock in place to deal with that, or I need to make sure I'm going to be able to deal with that capacity effectively. So I need to kind of plan for the future. So that's when the scenario planner comes in play. Also, where I love it is you can really personalize it from that side. But I know a lot of you kind of dealing very much kind of kind of property side of things. So we do have other scenarios which focus on the growth aspect. And that's where kind of you can pop into this. And like I said, you can chop and change. But the two I want to point out to you is probably buying a property and renting a property from that side. So if we were looking at buying a property, the other reason I love Fluidly is because it goes into a lot of detail. That's partially why I'm speaking for Britain. But also we do separate out different costs because we do appreciate when you're looking at projects and you're looking at those scenarios that you're planning for, there is lots of different things you have to take into consideration, some of which are going to be continuous versus some of which is just the initial kind of brunt of it. So for example, buying a property, those one-off costs a lot of people focus on, and you need to kind of have that direct what's going on. So for example, from like a deposit perspective, you can use the scroller to kind of bring that in. You might have some moving costs associated. A lot of people like to think about those alterations, but the fact that you can really drill down into this gives you an inclination of where you're going, but also equally you have those monthly costs afterwards you have to think about. So separating them both is very, very useful. But you can then see, if I was to actually kind of hide this from the plan, because you can hide things from the plan, and we were just focusing on that widget that allows us to see what it would look like buying a property, you then have that visual representation. So you can utilize that when having conversations with your client manager to say, right, this is the route I want to go down, and this is what we're basing this off of. So you can actually effectively build out the scenario, allowing you to see, is this the correct kind of, not the correct, sorry, is this the anticipated route? Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to focus on? But also it gives you that direct input on what that's going to do to your cash flow. And then you can very much kind of, again, bring more in. So it might be like buying equipment or machinery. You might have to kind of bring that in, or hiring a staff member on a salary. From that side, you can see the different kind of costs we have associated with it. And also kind of what we bring in from a detail perspective. We are also looking at ways, just so you do know from kind of a direct perspective, we are looking at ways for you to build out other scenarios. But what I kind of recommend from this side is utilizing it the way you can. If you have a particular scenario that you're building, get in contact with Robbie, get in contact with Dan. They can give you access and you can very much log in, have a little bit of a play around. If you have any particular questions, again, Robbie can get in touch with ourselves. But also if you have a particular scenario that you're planning for and you don't just think that any of these quite hit the biscuit or quite got the biscuit, get in touch and we can very much look to see like how can we build that out for you, so you're never going to be left in the lurch. But that is very much a kind of scenario planner, and it goes back to the idea of kind of planning for the future and making sure you're taking into consideration all of those different things. And equally the wonderful phrase cash is king, like I said before, it very much allows you to kind of think about that, where am I going to be going. So it sounds silly, you do sleep better at night, which is Fluidly slogan, but also very much that you can be in a position that, you know, you're not necessarily going to be worried or kind of concerned about it. And you can kind of take a step back and say, look, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm focusing on. So you have that strategic plan in place, which all in all is there to very much help you. And that's what we kind of want to do. So, I mean, that in all honesty is the whole of Fluidly. Hopefully it has been useful for you to see it today. I'm going to kind of hand back to Robbie, but I think what I will say is if it is something you are interested in after my conversations with kind of Robbie and Dan from our side, it's just a case, if you do want to look into it further, please get in touch with Robbie. I think you probably all have Robbie's email address, but he can add it into the chat function at the bottom here, so you can very much see that. And if it is something, just give him a call and then kind of arrange it, and we can look at kind of pulling your data into Fluidly from that perspective as well.
Cool, thank you very much, Chelsea. That's a great overview. If anybody has, again, I say, if anybody's got any questions, then please do ask them before we wrap up. I think, you know, for me, the main thing to sort of take from this is how intuitive some of this stuff is, and also I really focused on people taking the next step. So these widgets and stuff that Chelsea's just gone through it are excellent, because I know that they're relevant to lots of questions and stuff that come up, and sort of scenario planning that we do with clients around those, which is great. But also it's now the opportunity in terms of businesses taking that sort of next step forward in terms of what they're doing, and using these tools to really probably give them the confidence. And I think it's also that sanity check the right word? I don't know. I'm not sure whether sanity check's quite the right phrase, but it gives you people the ability to be able to make sure that the decisions that they're making have got some sort of foundation to them, as well, in terms of the impact that it has on stuff as well. So Yeah, really, really good, Chelsea. Thank you very much for your time today. Have you got anything else to add, Robbie, like from your perspective?
No, just great stuff. As Chelsea said, I'm just going to pop my email in the group, the chat. So obviously, if you need to get in contact, send it to me. Obviously, I can either try and answer directly to you, or as Chelsea's been saying, we can put some in the diary. All of us could get together and we can have a chat. We are looking to offer all of our Riverview clients a 2-month free trial. So if you are looking that you want to give it a go, get in contact with me, same again with that email address, just give me a shout and I can set you up. And then obviously then you can have a play around, and obviously we can have chats about it all, so we can go through it. So yeah, so send me an email, I'll get you set up. It's just like a little login, you set up your account, and then you have full access to it. And then obviously then we'll keep in contact with you during the 2-month free trial just to see how you're getting on. And then obviously then we can have further discussions going forwards about getting it set up properly for you. So yeah, anything like that, send it to my email.
And with that trial basis, what we do want to make sure is that, you know, often what we see is that we see a good bit of software like this, people start to use it and then don't continue with it. So that's the support that Robbie, alongside with support that Chelsea, can give where needed, is to make sure that people are having a good play with it, seeing the benefit that it can bring, and then like any questions that sort of come out of that, and that's where Robbie and potentially Izzy as well will be on hand should there be any questions and stuff that come up. So do you take Robbie up on that? Like I said, I've already had to play around with it myself with different bits and pieces, and it's good. You know, it is really, really easy to use, which when it comes to time, easy is good because it'll save you time, and time effectively is time you could be better spent doing something that you either and maybe enjoy or can earn more money doing, rather than making it sort of plugging through stuff. So please do take Robbie up on that thing. So I just want to wrap up and say final sort of thank you to Chelsea from Fluidly. Thank you very much for going through that. Really, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for everybody that attended, and we'll get a recording out of this as well. So we'll share that with everybody when that's available. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.